All right, so we're going to look at our first bit of code here. And this is just online Python beta. It's free. It's an online compiler. Most of the time, you have to download something to run. And if you're writing code a lot, you're going to want to do that. It's just going to be faster, more efficient, easier. But if just for learning, right? For the experience of learning, we can do online Python. So it's just online-python.com, and that'll bring you to this compiler. And when you join it, it's going to have this kind of default stuff here. So some of this is stuff we've already talked about. So I want to go over just the structure of the coding first, just to make sure we're familiar with it. So you have a main function. This is where everything is executed. And by default, when you start, most compilers, you're going to start with a main function. And this is where, again, all of your stuff is housed in this function. If you want to reference another function, you can create another function. But for the most part, especially for what we're doing in this class, in this camp, everything's going to be housed in the main function. We're not going to look at passing between files. We will look at passing between functions. But within this main function, you have comments. And again, we talked about comments before. It's just a hashtag makes just a regular comment, an inline comment, so to speak. So you could put one after you could put one as its own line. You could put it in between lines. It doesn't matter, right? A comment is never evaluated by the interpreter, and that's the important part of it. It's just for information to give to the user. So when we're talking about variables and values and inputs and prints, right? This is the default that comes up when you go to online Python. So most of the time, the default is going to be a hello world, but we're going to write a hello world. But in this example, what we have is we've written a function. Now, we haven't talked about functions yet, right? So we don't need to worry too much about that. We're going to actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this function because it's not something that we've talked about, not something that we know. But we have talked about the input. We have talked about converting to an integer. And all of this is happening on one line. And for some people, that can get kind of confusing, right? So we are navigating from the left to the right, and a bunch of stuff is happening. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to break this down. The first thing you're doing is creating a variable. So we're going to call it my variable. And you're setting it equal to some input where you're asking the user to enter a number. Now, when you do that, whatever the user inputs is going to be stored into my variable here. But as we talked about in the last video, you can't do math with my variable. So at some point, you're going to have to convert my variable to an integer. And you do that by running the int function, which converts whatever is in it. In this case, it's a string called my variable into an integer that you can do math with. All this line is doing is both of those lines at once. You can stack stuff like this. You can stack functions from left to right, and it will continue to do exactly what you're telling it to do. It's just simplifying it a little bit. So when we have a variable a, we're going to enter a number. So if we just run this right now, there's a run button down here at the bottom. And forgive me for the recording. It's the bottom console is a little bit cut off, but I think we'll be able to tell. So it says enter your first number. I'm going to enter 7. And enter the second number. I'm going to enter 5. Now I'm going to get an error. And the reason I'm getting an error is because previously we had this sum function, and I have deleted that. So remember I told you that Python reads from top to bottom. So it gets this variable, it's starting to print this out, but then it gets to here and it's looking for a function called sum, and it doesn't exist, and that's where it's giving me my error. But that's okay, because we can solve this problem by creating another variable called sum and just setting it equal to a plus b. So we don't need a function for what was happening, right? The compiler here, Online Python, used a function because it was teaching us, demonstrating the concept of a function, but we haven't learned that yet, so I've deleted it. And all we're doing is we're making a third variable that sums a plus b. And then in the print, we can say the sum of a and b is sum, right? And this is what you want it to say. So the sum of a and b is whatever the sum is. So whatever numbers they put in, just doing the math, it's telling you the first number, it's telling you the second number, and then it's telling you the third number. And this is good, but if we run this, we're going to get probably an error. Oh, nope, it worked. So that's good. Normally you're going to want to convert these to a string because they are integers, but this print function is smart enough to know that you put in an integer and that would give it an error, so it goes ahead and converts it to a string for you. But normally you would want to convert each value, each variable, to a string because the print function works primarily with strings. But in Python, it can do some of that simple changes for you. It takes it an extra step, but it can do it for you, so you don't have to worry about it as much. It's not that it can. Any language can do it for you, but most of them just don't. So when we're looking at code, this is kind of the idea. We have inputs, and then we have outputs, right? And all along the way, we're going to have variables, and they're going to have values. So I want to go through and just do kind of the default hello world. So I'm going to delete all of this, and I'm going to make a variable called name and set it equal to input. What is your name? And then after that, I'm going to do a print. And I'll say hello and then name. Now again, by default, this comma is a space. So if we run it, I'm going to give it my name, and it says hello Adam, because that comma by default is a space. But if you wanted to, then you could put another parameter in here for, make that a comma, change the separator to be a comma, and then when you run it, instead of saying hello Adam, it's going to say hello Adam, but there's no space. So you can put whatever you want in the separator here, right? I could put a space after it, and then when I run it, I'm going to get, ran an error, hello, comma, Adam, right? So again, you can have all of these different print statements. So I'm going to just do them all together, hello, comma, name, and then print hello, hello, comma, name with a separator of, I don't know, we'll just make it 3 colons. Anything you want to make as a separator, you can. And a lot of times this is important if you're trying to express a comma delimited file for Excel, then you would need to put commas in. If you're trying to represent more of a table, you might just put multiple spaces in or hyphens or something. You just have a lot of control over what the default is, but the default is hello Adam. Now, you'll notice here that every time it's making a new line. If I didn't want that, then I could set the end to be whatever I wanted on each of them. We'll just set it on the first one here. And again, I have to give it my name. And then instead of making a new line, it's just making these hyphens. I don't like the format of that, so I'm going to put some spaces in there. Have to keep giving it my name. Oh, I typed it wrong, but I'm M now. So hello M, hello M, hello M. So it works with the value that you input, right? Stores it in the variable name, and then when you print, it refers back to that variable value and uses it in the function. So all I want you to do, just for the assignment, create a variable called name, set it equal to input, and ask the user what their name is. Now, you can leave it like that if you want. One thing, well, we'll just leave it like that for now. You can leave it like that, and I like to put the colon in just for structure, but you don't have to. And then I want a print statement that just says hello, and then name, and I'm going to put an exclamation point on the end, because I'm excited about it, right? So if I run it, what is your name? You tell it Adam, hello Adam, and it puts an exclamation point. Now, this is what I want you to do for the turn-in. You can send me a screenshot of this. There's a share button. If you want it, you can actually share this to me in the submission. You can submit a screenshot. It doesn't matter. For this, I just want to know that you're able to get into the online Python and write some code and compile it. But I do want to talk about, so this is an example where I have an issue, right? Because hello Adam works fine, but I don't want that space after my name, right? So what do I do? Well, what I could do is I could just do sep and set it equal to nothing, right? So this is an empty string. There's no value inside of it. And if I run that, and I give it my name, then it's hello Adam without that. But I can control that a little bit by putting a space here, and then I get the format that I want, right? A lot of times with the print statement, it's about just getting the format that you want, making it look pretty in the console, making it readable, legible, so that everything goes together like it's supposed to. So again, that's what I want you to submit, just a very simple input. What is your name? Hello name. If you want to put more stuff in it, you can. You can put other values, variables, do some math, write something fancy. But the idea is I just want you to be able to access online Python and then just write and compile some code in the right format. Now, we have talked about the spacing. As we get into writing functions, like the function that they had for sum, right, they had some spacing here, and they did other things. We'll talk about that in another video. Right now, all I want is just exactly what I have here. And that's it. That's pretty much everything for today. Lots of more information, a little bit getting into the coding, and then tomorrow we'll do more coding, and we'll just keep on moving. So I appreciate you all, and we will see you soon.